friends, it's your old pal Jordan the Lion, and we are headed to Arlington today. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. What a great mural. It says Stay Wild, Texas. Kind of appropriate for who we're vlogging today. Gonna go visit the grave of the Abbott brothers, Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Abbott. So it's on the other side of the fountain, and it now has a protective gate around it. It did not always, but I have a friend coming out here to join me that was good friends with Dimebag and Vinnie and also worked for them, and maybe he'll explain why they have this. Heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. God, what legends. They should still be here. I mean, they really, it's hard to believe that they're not. And here you can see grave of Carolyn. So the Abbott brothers in the music world were genuine, they were unique, and they were full throttle. I don't know how else you describe these guys. I mean, they were amazingly talented metal musicians. They were in a band called Pantera, and Dimebag and Vinnie both, in their own way, were regarded as some of the greatest guitar players and drummers of their lifetime. And even Eddie Van Halen, when Dimebag passed away, Dime was a huge Van Halen fan, and he idolized Eddie and the Van Halen 2 guitar, the yellow and black guitar, and wanted Eddie to make him one. And because of the way that Dime passed so abruptly, Eddie was never able to get one to him, so he took his original and buried it with Dime here. Pantera, to like my generation, was the metal band. To like what Iron Maiden was before them, it was like, this was raw attitude. Everybody loved them. I mean, everybody that I grew up with that loved metal loved them. And eventually the band ended, and these two went off to form another band called Damage Plan. And on the verge of just everything taking off for the band, they were out doing a gig in Columbus, Ohio at Al Rosa's Villa, and a freaking deranged fan at the beginning of the show went on stage and shot Dimebag while he was playing. Like I said, nobody saw this coming. Nobody, I mean, it just shocked everybody. It shocked the world, and it was heartbreaking to my generation. And Vinnie, you can see, passed pretty recently, 2018. Says on Dimebag's, he came to rock and rock like no other, with a heart twice the size of Texas, our beloved brother, companion, mentor, idol, and friend. We love you, Dime, until we meet again. And then Vinnie says, don't ever think it's not a good time. You do think it's not a good time. A good time is a good time, bad time is a bad time, and a wonderful time is irreplaceable. Hell yeah. And that was Vinnie's project at the end, hell yeah. I love that on Dimebag's they've got his famous guitar. And on Vinnie's his drums. Kind of crazy to think of Eddie Van Halen's guitar being down there with Dime, but so fitting. I mean, if you ever watch Dimebag play with that pink beard and everything, I mean, nobody looked like they ever were playing a guitar having more fun than him, than maybe like Eddie Van Halen or Randy Rhoads. Like, some people when they play, Jimi Hendrix is just, they look like like life is coming out of them when they're playing, so it's very appropriate that Dime would have a guitar down there with him for eternity. It looks like they've put plexiglass over Vinnie's. Another interesting thing is that both guys were giant Kiss fans who are friends of ours actually, and Kiss provided caskets for them to be both buried in.
You know, like Jim Morrison grave.
Oh, right.
They would carve this, and so they polished it to clean it, and then they put this plexiglass over his to prevent that from happening, but they didn't think about how they were going to clean it underneath. A lot of crazy fans that would come and lay down and sleep and camp, and there was this...
Most people probably doing it harmlessly, but there's always somebody that...
there was this woman that kept, you know, camping out here. She would set up tiki torches and a cooler and lawn chairs, and she used to tell people she was related to them. And I can tell you that they don't have any relatives. Vinnie and Dime had no brothers, no sisters. They have no cousins. They have no aunts or uncles. They have no kin whatsoever. Their mother is buried here. Their father will be buried there. And anybody that tells you they are related to them is lying. They don't have any relatives other than their father, who's still alive, and he's not doing well.
How did you meet them?
Well, you know,
and by the way, Video Bob, for people that don't know, this is Video Bob on YouTube.
Well, I got the name Video Bob because I did music videos for bands here in Dallas-Fort Worth, and you know, when they were playing, I mean, they were famous right out of high school, and they used to play at a local club in Fort Worth called Joe's Garage back in the 80s, and I started going there about 1988, and I had a VHS camcorder, which was a big deal back then, and I used to record the bands, and Darrell was always really interested in audio video. We used to talk about video, and he had gotten a camcorder early on, but he always just thought it was cool that I would record the band. And you know, Vinnie, I didn't start spending time with until after Darrell was killed. I wasn't really close with Darrell, you know, because Darrell was a party animal. He liked to drink and smoke, and I didn't do those kind of things. And so, like, I knew him, I had his number, but we weren't like tight or anything. And then when Darrell was killed, Vinnie wanted to kind of preserve his legacy and started his own record company in 2006 called Big Ben Records, and he hired me to work at his record label. So I worked for Vinnie from 2006 until his death, maintaining his social media, doing promotional stuff, his videos, music videos. I drove his tour bus, his limo, and he was just one of my closest friends. And
you don't come out very often.
why'd you make me come out here, Jordan? I haven't been here since day. When we buried Darrell, Eddie Van Halen came and put his black and yellow guitar in the casket. People wonder if that really happened. It happened. I watched it happen. I watched him put it right there. That guitar is right there. But
you never hear, like, about these two guys, you don't hear one bad word from anybody. You never hear other bands not getting along with them. It seems like these guys were like, when you met them, they were the life of the party.
well, Darrell was like, there couldn't ever be a lull. You know, like, I don't want to say I didn't like Darrell, but you couldn't just chill out. Like, he would, if there was a lull, people were sitting around, he had to fire it up. He had to be the, you know, the court jester, and he would start shooting Roman candles at you and pulling pranks, and which is great for videos to watch, but it was rather annoying. And he was always trying to get me high because I was a square. He would give, to this day I still have this little brass container. He was really into whippets, you know what a whippet is?
Yeah.
It's like a cartridge of nitrous oxide, and you would put that in a balloon and you would breathe it, and it would give you the wah-wahs for about 30 seconds. And he kept feeding those to me, you know, and that was the closest thing I would do because I knew that was pretty harmless. Don't do that, kids, it's bad for you. But, you know, so I didn't tour with Darrell. I just saw him. Like, he was a fixture. He was he was at all the local clubs.
Right.
He was all the time hanging out. Everybody in this town met him and got his autograph and took a picture with him. And, you know, Vinnie was also extremely very personable, but he was more chill. You know, they had invested in a couple of clubs. They had their gentleman's club called the Clubhouse, and they had their own section there. And you could go there almost any weekend that they weren't on tour and meet them. And they were just super cool, and they would just do shots with you. when Vinny hired me, he hired me because he did know that I was responsible and that I was, you know, he knew he could trust me to, you know, drive for him, drive their tour bus, take care of things, so that he could take advantage of that and just get plastered.
Yeah.
And he drank, he liked Sky vodka. He would buy cases of that. He had a big gulp cup, and he would just fill that thing up with like that much vodka and then a little water and lime. And he just drank that all the time. And when you do that all the time, you know, he had cardiomyopathy and an enlarged heart. And he just woke up one morning and had a heart attack. And just like that. And it's shocking at 54 years old as I approached that age. And, you know, he was always sort of a kind of a combination of a brother and a father figure because he had just so much wisdom, because he was so worldly. He had traveled the whole globe so many times and met everybody. And so when you have that much experience, you know, he just had a lot of wisdom. And he gave me opportunities that I would have never gotten had I not met him. I fully recognize that. He made my dreams come true of making music videos that played on MTV and all these different other great things. I got to tour with him. I got to meet all these amazing people, and it was all because of him and his generosity. The dude would go to the store and buy $2,000 worth of steaks and lobster and cook it for everybody, including the other touring bands. So everybody loved Vinny because he was just so generous. Like when we were on tour with Hell Yeah, some of the other opening bands, they were making so little money they couldn't hardly afford, you know, food.
Yeah.
And he would cook for them. He would barbecue out by the bus and feed the other bands and the crew. And he's out there, and people are like, I can't believe Vinny Paul's out there with a spatula, and he's out there cooking. And one of the last projects we were working on was a cookbook he wanted to do called Drumming Up an Appetite. We never finished it. I have all the recipes and pictures and everything, but, you know.
Oh, man, you should make some videos of, like, you making some of his dishes in honor of...
Oh, my God. I have totes of...
Because you live in Vegas now, which he moved to Vegas as well.
Yeah, we used to go to Vegas constantly. We were there all the time, and he ended up renting an apartment there for a while. And then he said, man, I need to just buy a house here. And so in 2009, when that big housing crash happened, he took advantage of that and bought this really nice place, really cheap, and fixed it up. He spent like $100,000 on the pool. He spent more on his pool than I spent on my house.
Dude, you can't take it with you, as we see. You know, he had no family to leave it to.
Yeah.
Didn't he leave, like...
So his assistant, we had a band assistant, Brian, who lived with him and, you know, was his best friend for about 15 years. He came in when I was working in 2006, and he basically left everything to him and his girlfriend, primarily to his assistant, Brian, and, you know, he's been managing it. I guess I don't know all the details other than what was public. I believe the his share of Pantera rights, as well as Dimes, went to Dimes' girlfriend Rita. They weren't married, but they were, you know, an item, you know, since they were teenagers.
Yeah.
And she's been holding the torch for Darrell a long time. I know Rita.
Cool.
I met up with her not too long ago because I found, it's a long story, but I'd found one of his award plaques that somebody had, and I got it from him and brought it to her because I said, this is Darrell's, and she goes, yeah, that was missing, and I brought it to her.
Very cool, dude.
But, you know, because there's a lot of stuff floating around out there that shouldn't be. I have a lot of their stuff, you know, like I have, you know, Vinny's drum kits. Like when I put together a drum kit for my band, I told Vinny, I said, hey, would you go down to like Guitar Center with me so I could get a drum set? He goes, dude, we're not going to do that. He took me to his warehouse. He pulls out a big Pantera Road case. He opens up. He says, man, Pantera hasn't played since 2001. I play with D-Drum now. This is all Pearl equipment. You can have it. And he pulls out all these cymbals and all this stuff. So the kit that I have mounted above my kitchen, or all that hardware, that's Pantera's last tour pack.
That's very cool, dude.
He just said, you know, I'm not using this stuff anymore. You can have it. And that's the kind of guy Vinny was. He would give away things like that to people as gifts, and you know, he would give me things constantly and say, here, go put this on eBay, I want to see what it's worth. You know, I goes, I want to see what my autograph's worth, go sell it on the eBay. And so he would give me cases of books and CDs, kind of as partial payment. Like I would do a favor for him and he would go, here, take a case of books, which I helped make the book anyway, but he would give me these things and tell me to sell them on eBay. And then you know, and people would say, oh, you know, you're selling stuff on eBay, and I go, yeah, well, it's on the official Big Ben Records eBay. Like, how do you think I got that stuff?
Plus, it helps fans know that it's legit when it comes from.
Well, yeah, like he would just sit down at the table, and I tell you, like signing autographs, I used to get mad at him because these eBay people would bring just stacks of stuff.
Right? Yeah, I've
like,
seen that.
Come on, let's go. And he's like, no, and I'm like, dude, they're just gonna sell it online. He goes, hey man, I'm probably gonna pay this dude's rent. That's fine. So he would sit there and just sign, as long as he had the time to do it. And I would try to rustle him away, and he's like, no, it's cool. And he would just sign, and people would sell the stuff. He goes, look, if somebody can get $1 off of my signature, then, you know, all he cared about is that no one would ever say, that guy's a dick, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's why they have such a good reputation. He's a great example of who to be and who I want to be.
Yeah. Our pal Eric Singer says the same thing. He said people come up to him and ask for an autograph, and he said he's seen so many bands just walk by and not, and he goes, it takes me 2 seconds, you know, what I got 2 seconds for that, you know.
It's like, you know, I'm not going to name any other names of bandmates, but there are people who will not sign a guitar or a drum or whatever because they know that it's going to go on the secondary market.
Yeah.
But Vinnie had the idea, and Daryl did too. They're like, well, let them sell it. That's great. Like, if they make money off of me, then, like, they were actually cool with it because he thought, hey, you know, as long as my name is out there. His greatest fear was being irrelevant, I think. He wanted to, you know, like, because hell yeah, I didn't make a lot of money. You know, I say this now, I'm sorry, Vinnie, but you know, we were playing festivals, doing afternoon shows, and it wasn't doing that great. He funded the thing because he enjoyed being a rock star.
And it sounds like he's super generous too. So when you buy an entire groups of band stakes and stuff for the road and stuff,
you know, I mean, he did well with his investments. You know, some of the other band members, as we know, they didn't do well with their investments, and everybody in the world has been contacting me about my opinion of the Pantera reunion. You know, I try to reserve my judgment simply because I know that the people that are behind it are the people who now own the estate, and they need to make a living, and they want to do it. But I think if I listen closely, I can actually hear them spinning in the grave, because every day this guy would tell me about, you know, like, I was with him all the time, so every time we would meet somebody would walk up and say several things that would piss him off. They'd say, hey, I'm really sorry about your brother. It's like, oh, here we go. Every day of my life, I got to be reminded about the worst day of my life.
Exactly.
And then they'd follow that up with, when is Pantera getting back together? And it's kind of like if somebody met me and go, hey, when are you getting back together with your ex-wife? I'm like, can't wait.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the two things that nobody wants to hear. Yeah.
I watched him show me like an email where he was offered, I don't know, it was over $10 million to do a Pantera reunion tour, and he was just like, nope. He goes, dude, I already got like $6 million in the bank. I don't need.
Do you think it's because of the bad taste it left in his mouth, the way it ended, or because they were both just like, we're on to something else? We like Damage Plan. They were doing.
You know, it's like he's like, look, I love my brother. I don't want to live in my brother's shadow. I'm my own musician. You know, there is no Pantera without Dimebag. It's like there is no Van Halen without Eddie Van Halen.
Right.
I mean, you can go out there and do it and call it what you want.
Do a tribute, yeah.
And Phil has been out there performing Pantera songs all these years, but you know, he was very bitter about it. I mean, he felt like if Phil and Rex hadn't done what they had done at the time, Pantera would have continued. They would have never been playing some club where some fan would have jumped up and shot him. I mean, you can't blame Phil directly for what happened, but at the same time, you know, the butterfly effect of one person's decision and how it affects the future is just the way he felt about it. And he's like, look, these two dudes destroyed this band. I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of cashing in on it later. I'm doing my own thing already, and it's in the past. And I get it. As a fan, that's fantastic because, like, they haven't played together since 2001. And, you know, their last show was 9/11. When 9/11 happened, they had to shut down the tour, and they hadn't played together since. There was one time that Vinnie played with Rex at a little club right down the street. It used to be called Hot Rods and Hogs, I think. And they were having a New Year's party, and Rex showed up, and Vinnie had a little side project called Gasoline that him and Dime used to do. And they would play, they would just show up at a club and play. That was the kind of stuff they would do. I mean, here you have these musicians that fill stadiums, and they would go down to a local bar and just jam with a local band because they loved music, they loved fun. The very last thing that Dime ever said to Vinnie, right before he was killed, they had this little thing that they would say, and it was just the words Van Halen.
Yeah.
It just meant good times. And
rock like Van Halen.
Yeah, Dime was like warming up. He was just doing his finger warm-ups, and he just gave Vinnie a fist bump, and he goes, Van Halen. And they did that, and he went up and got on his kit, and they started, and that was the last thing they said to each other. As soon as they started playing, this guy, Nathan Gale, he came in through the back door, got on stage, and he killed Darrell by shooting him in the back of the head 5 times. And then he killed my friend Jeff, known as Mayhem, and shot him in the chest, and took our drum tech, Cat, hostage. I think he shot him in the leg, in the arm, or in the hand. He was holding a gun to his head. Officer came in, killed the gunman. He had also killed a fan in the audience named Nathan Bray. And so it was just a terrible time. You know, nothing like that had ever really happened before. No one was expecting it, and it just destroyed Vinnie. He literally tried to drink himself to death, and it just didn't work. And so one day he was just inspired, and he goes, you know, I have all this stuff that Darrell recorded, and it never got put out for the fans. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put out our last, what would have been Pantera video that we did called Dime Vision. So I helped him put that out. It was on DVD. We did a book called DIMEBAG, He Came to Rock, and I helped with that. And then we put out a CD with the country singer David Allan Coe called Rebel Meets Rebel. I look at all the stuff. I see drumsticks, I see picks, obviously dimes, drum key there, roses, Pantera beer cans. You know, they have to come and clean this every other day because so many fans come and they want to leave some part of themselves, and I get it. You know, for fans, these guys are like celebrities. I see my friend Vinnie.
Yeah.
Who, you know, I would normally be at his house right now. He'd be watching football, he'd be grilling steaks, we'd be barbecuing, and that's what we would be doing on a Sunday. And that's the guy that I remember. I you know, even when I would see him up on stage, I'd be like, wow, he's a rock star. But that's not the guy I knew. I knew a completely different guy that, you know, would just put on a baseball cap and go to Walmart in his Crocs.
Now we're gonna go eat at Dimebag Darrell's favorite Mexican restaurant, Campo Verde. Right away on the door there's some googly-eyed parrot. Okay, I dig this already. Oh wow.
This is the legendary Campo Verde in Pantego, outside of Arlington, right by Darrell's house. Vinnie and Dime used to come here for lunches about every day. This is basically what the inside of Darrell's house looks like. He loved this vibe so much. They loved Christmas and the Christmas lights, so Darrell replicated this, and his whole house was just Christmas lights like this.
That's awesome.
And they used to hang out
I would have loved that.
every day. Great Mexican place. They have this train. The little toy train will run through the entire restaurant. It'll be by here in a minute. And they used to have some of their gold records on the wall. I think the owner's daughter, I think, took them home.
What is it, like a band? Mariachi band.
Yeah, mariachi. Of course. I think they have something over here.
Oh yeah.
I don't know the artist who's making and selling these. Well, here's their card.
Well, we forgot to show the food, but the food was excellent. Yeah, had
This is a
cheese
thing in
enchilada.
Chips and cheese.
So before we call it a day, I want to go to Dimebag Darrell's house. There's something out front that I want to see. So this was his house, and what I wanted to see, I'm not going to bug him or anything, but up by the front doors, there's a statue of Dimebag, which I thought was very cool. That his friend that inherited everything would keep his memory alive like that. I saw a video online like a year or so ago of a guy that got to go in, and he saw like a lot of Dimebag's guitar collection in there. I saw an old video when Dimebag was alive, and they used to have like the tour bus parked inside of there when they were doing Damage Plan. So kind of cool to see, you know, the house. Really sad to hear Bob's stories and to have to, you know, pay homage to these guys because of their passing, but what a great musical legacy they've left. Thank you everyone for watching. If you're new here, please hit the like button, please subscribe, and please ring the bell for notifications. We'll see you all next time from Arlington, Texas. Have a great night and goodbye. Actually, just as I was about to leave, I noticed what would be the backyard. You can see the tour bus.